So today we're going to be talking about the Italian Baroque. When we talk about the Baroque in Italy, we really divide it into three groups or three categories. There's Baroque Spectacle, which is big and over the top, it's spectacular. Baroque Classicism, that looks back to the classical world and continues the kind of use of Greek and Roman models and stories that we saw in the Renaissance. And then Baroque Naturalism. Up until this point, classicism and naturalism have overlapped with each other. They've been very similar. Artists who are interested in naturalism or a naturalistic representation of people and situations have often looked to classical models for their inspiration. But in the Baroque, we start to see that true naturalism, drawing people and scenes as they are, is not quite the same as drawing them as the Greek and Roman ideals that we see in the Renaissance and in the classical world. We're going to start today with Baroque Spectacle, and the artist who probably represents Baroque Spectacle more than any other is Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Bernini has a long career in the arts, starting from when he's a young teenager. He takes his first commission at 12 or 13 years old, and he sculpts a sculpture of a lamb for a bishop in Rome. And his father was also a sculptor. He learned how to sculpt, but also the important patrons and the important people in his career and in his trade from a young age. One of Bernini's most important responsibilities in the early 17th century is the finishing of the interior of St. Peter's Basilica. The cathedral itself is largely built in the previous century, in the 16th century, but the interior details and where all the art that came out of the old cathedral was going to go in the new cathedral were the responsibility of Bernini. He also contributes two important pieces of his own to the cathedral, one of which we're seeing here, the Baldocchino. A baldacchino, or in English a baldachin, is a canopy that covers a sacred space, and in this case the baldacchino covers the grave of St. Peter, but it also acts as a frame. So when people come into the cathedral, it frames the Cathedra Petri, or the throne of St. Peter, which we're going to see in the next slide. There had been some version of a baldacchino in the old cathedral, and also in the new cathedral since it had been completed, but those versions were more temporary. They were made out of cloth and wood in most cases, and instead Bernini builds a 100-foot-high bronze statue. He uses a twisted column motif, and he does this in particular to reference columns that at the time were thought to be from the Temple of Solomon. And these, you can see them just to the right-hand side of this picture. These were installed by Bernini next to the baldacchino in order that viewers would understand that reference or that allusion that he was making. However, Bernini was not just motivated by religious concerns. He was also motivated by secular concerns. So if we look onto the hanging pennants at the edge of the baldacchino, we can see this 3 bumblebee insignia on 2 of these pennants at either side. This is the family crest of the Barberini family, the pope who was Bernini's patron. If we go to the next slide, we can also see the Cathedra Petri. This is a sculpture that contains a holy relic, the throne of St. Peter. And like I said previously, the baldacchino is designed to act as a frame. So as you come into the church, the darker bronze of the baldacchino frames the bright gold and the light from the window in the Cathedra Petri. In both of these pieces we can see that they're big, they're over the top, they're multimedia, they use sculpture, relief, and in the case of the Cathedra Petri they also combine stained glass and the window. So when we talk about Baroque Spectacular, this is really what we have in mind. Next, we're going to talk about Baroque naturalism.